Hi guys. We are heading into section 5 of chapter 9, well on our way to completing yet another chapter. In 1913, the Democrats had taken office under President Woodrow Wilson for the first time in 17 years. Like Roosevelt, Wilson claimed progressive ideals but had a different idea for the federal government. He believed in attacking large concentrations of power to give greater freedom to average citizens. As Wilson moved to act on his new programs under his New Freedom Plan during his administration, Congress enacted two key antitrust measures. The first was the Clayton Antitrust Act in 1914, and it prohibited corporations from acquiring the stock of another if doing so would create a monopoly. The Clayton Act also specified that labor unions and farm organizations not only had a right to exist, but would also no longer be subject to antitrust laws. The AFL, which stands for the American Federation of Labor, greatly supported this because strikes, peaceful picketing, and boycotts became legal. The second major antitrust measure was the Federal Trade Commission, which investigated possible violations of regulatory statuses, put an end to many unfair business practices, and required reports from all corporations. In an effort to curb the power of big business, another key reform Wilson worked towards was to lower tariff rates, which hadn't actually been done since the Civil War. In 1913, Wilson was successful in ratifying the 16th Amendment, which legislated and legalized a federal income tax and provided revenue by taxing individual earnings and corporate profits. Families making over $4,000 per year were taxed 1%, all the way up to 6% for families and corporations that made $500,000 or more per year. Next, Wilson turned his attention to financial reform. He, among many others, saw the nation as needing a way to strengthen the ways in which banks were ran, as well as a way to quickly adjust the amount of money in the circulation. Wilson's solution was to establish a decentralized private banking system under federal control. The Federal Reserve Act of 1913 divided the nations into 12 districts and established a regional central bank in each district. These bankers' banks were then served the other banks within the district. Wilson's system is actually still in place today. For you visual learners, here is a picture of what the Federal Reserve System setup looks like. Beginning at the Federal Reserve, money is then transferred into the regional bankers' bank. Then it goes to the local districts at the bottom. As we have seen firsthand in our recent election, Wilson also targeted specific groups which aided him immensely in him being elected. While Wilson pushed for hard reform of trust, tariffs, and banking, determined women intensified their push for the vote. As of 1910, women had federal voting rights only in Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, Washington, and Idaho. Finally, determined suffragists saw success come within reach as a result of these three developments: local activism, bold strategies that developed enthusiasm, and the rebirth of the national movement under Carrie Chapman Catt. The suffrage movement was given new strength by growing numbers of college-educated women. They used door-to-door campaign tactics, and many even got involved in the European suffrage movement, bringing back many additional strategies to add to their campaign. A key advocator for women's suffrage was Susan B. Anthony's successor, Carrie Chapman Catt. As president of the National American Women's Suffrage Association, she chose to concentrate on 5 tactics: organization, close ties between local, state, and national workers, establishing a wide base of support, lobbying, and gracious, ladylike behavior. Due to the slow progress suffragists oftentimes experienced, some decided to make more radical tactics. Lucy Burns and Alice Paul formed their own organization called the Congressional Union, which was succeeded by the National Women's Party. They pressured the federal government to pass a suffrage amendment, and by 1917, Paul had organized her followers to mount a round-the-clock picket line around the White House. Some of the picketers were arrested, jailed, and even force-fed when they attempted a hunger strike. With World War I on the rise, fighting overseas along with Americans' increased involvement quickly took precedence over suffrage. Along with the patriotic support women were producing for soldiers, Congress had finally passed the 19th Amendment in 1919, granting women the right to vote. Upon American entry into World War I in 1914, just 5 years later, the end of the war also marked the end of the Progressive Era.